Benchmark Advanced 3rd Grade Reading, Unit 1, Week 1, Minilesson 1. Today we'll begin with a read aloud. I'm going to read aloud a selection called Twinkie Tells All. This selection shares details about a famous python. Although this is a fictional story, some of the details are facts, and the selection is written in a way that sounds like an article. Listen carefully and determine who the narrator is. Twinkie Tells All by Colette Weil Perinello. What if a snake could talk? This is what one famous snake might say. Hi, you probably think I'm going to brag about being named the largest albino python by the Guinness World Records in 2014. But I don't brag much. In fact, I'm pretty quiet. Yes, it's nice to get the recognition, and I like appearing on TV and having my picture taken. Even when humans knock on my glass enclosure or yell, "Twinkie," as loud as they can so I'll stick my tongue out at them, I know they love me. I have over 10,000 likes on Facebook. Let's pause for just a moment. As I'm reading, one question I have is, who is telling the story? The text begins with, "This is what one famous snake might say." So I know this narrator is a snake. The title is Twinkie Tells All, so I think the snake's name is Twinkie. I will ask and answer more questions about the details as I read. Let me tell you, it hasn't always been easy to get humans to understand me. That is, not until I met Jay Brewer and came to live at the Reptile Zoo, which is located inside the prehistoric pet store in Fountain Valley, California. Jay loves me like a father, and he knows everything about me. I can tell by the way he rubs my back or how he shows other humans to care for me. Like last year, though, I didn't feel so good. Being so big and different can really be lonely, and I stopped eating for a whole 2 months. But Jay figured it out, and he brought another big python to visit me. I was so much happier that I started eating again. I didn't always have it this great. I think I was one of 30 other eggs born to my mom, and one of a bunch of snakes in a cage. I was born with a melanism, which is a condition that makes me bright white and yellow instead of the usual black. At first I thought I was different because of my beautiful pink eyes. I soon realized that it was my smooth vanilla and yellow skin that humans love to touch. Jay bought me when I was just 4 years old and weighed only 50 pounds. Now I happily weigh 356 pounds and I'm 23 feet long. Let's talk about this for just a minute. As I was reading, the word melanism was a challenge for me. But I read on, and the next sentence says, that made me bright white and yellow instead of the usual black. So that sounds a lot like the definition for albino, which was used in paragraph 1. The word melanism must have a similar meaning to the word albino. The ism ending often means a state or condition. The A at the beginning can mean without, and the root melanin refers to the substance that colors skin, hair, and eyes. Melanism is the condition of skin, hair, and eyes without coloring. All right, so back to the text. I live in a beautiful 17-foot VIR, which means very important reptile, glass enclosure. And I have my own personal climbing rock wall, small pool, warming area, and human helpers. I especially like to climb along my wall for exercise or to cool myself off in my fancy personal pool. I only get hungry every couple of weeks, and when I do, Jay leaves me an animal to eat. A fun part of my week is when Jay or others at the Reptile Zoo let me crawl around wherever I want. One time, I got stuck on the ledge beneath the alligator area, and it took 4 humans to convince me to come out. I just wanted to snuggle up in there because it was so cozy and warm. All right, so let's pause and talk again for just a moment. I'd like for you to find someone there in the room with you, and with that person, ask and answer questions about the selection and what we have read. For instance, you might ask, why is Twinkie special? And then talk about the answer to that question. Or you could ask, who helps Twinkie? And discuss your answer for that. So pause the video for a moment, and with your partner, ask some questions about the selection and discuss the answers to those questions. Okay, now let's finish the text. At first, I didn't like my name. A human won the contest to name me. What is a Twinkie anyway? My guess is that a Twinkie must be soft and smooth, and of course, famous like me. So I'd like for you to pause the video once more and talk with someone in the room there with you about an answer to this question. And the question is, how did being albino affect Twinkie's life? Pause the video and talk about that for just a moment. Okay, great. So our learning targets for today are that we're going to take a look at our essential question for this unit, and we're going to talk about some of your prior knowledge, what you already know about this question that we're going to pose throughout the unit. You're going to be generating some questions and some ideas, just like you did with a read aloud, but to go with the selection that we discussed today. When we're discussing our ideas, we are going to use complete sentences as we speak. We will be having some discussions today, and so we're going to talk about our rules for discussion and then follow those agreed upon rules. We will be watching a video to go with our unit, and we're going to talk about some ideas and some details that are presented in that video. And we're going to talk about some vocabulary related to the topic that we're discussing. So we're going to acquire some new vocabulary and use that vocabulary. Unit 1 is all about animal adaptations. And in your text for close reading, I'd like for you to go ahead and open up to pages 2 and 3. The essential question for our unit is, how do living things survive in their environment? And for the next 3 weeks, we're going to think about this question as we read informational texts that describe how living things survive in different environments. So let's take a look at pages 2 and 3 from Text for Close Reading. And I'll get there now with you. So here again is our essential question. How do living things survive in their environment? And so you have some questions to go with that. What is the greatest challenge living things face in your environment? How does your day-to-day life affect animals in your environment? Are people responsible for the survival of all living things? Why or why not? I'd like for you to take a look at the vocabulary word environment in your essential question. What does environment mean? Pause the video and talk to someone in the room there with you about the word environment. What does that word mean? All right, very good. So the word environment means the surroundings of an animal or a plant or any living thing. All of the things that surround that in its natural habitat. That's the environment. And as we take a closer look at this essential question, how do living things survive in their environment? What does that bring to mind? What prior knowledge do you have about the needs of living things as they strive to survive in their environment? And you can use the pictures here for some ideas. Okay, so we're going to watch the Unit 1 video, and as we're watching, I want you to keep in mind, what do the images in this video bring to mind about how living things survive in their environment?
Animal adaptations. An octopus blends into its background when he notices a predator approaching. A hungry cheetah needs to stay hidden while sneaking up on her prey if she wants to eat. A human being is caught in a sudden rainstorm. How do living things survive in their environment?
So, as we were watching the Unit 1 video, what ideas, what new ideas, or what prior knowledge was activated as you were watching that video about the ways in which animals survive in their environment? Take a moment, pause this video, and talk to the person in the room there with you about what the images in the video brought to mind about things you already know or any new ideas about how living things survive in their environment. Okay, so we're going to replay the video. And as we look back at the video this time, I want you to think about this vocabulary word, adapt. This is a new vocabulary word that we're going to talk about in this unit. And as we watch the Unit 1 video again, I want you to listen and watch for clues to see if you can determine the meaning of the word adapt.
Animal adaptations. An octopus blends into its background when he notices a predator approaching. A hungry cheetah needs to stay hidden while sneaking up on her prey if she wants to eat. A human being is caught in a sudden rainstorm. How do living things survive in their environment?
So take a minute and discuss with someone there with you about the meaning of the word adapt. What does it mean for a living thing to adapt to its environment? Pause and talk for just a minute. Very good. So when living things adapt to their environment, they adjust to that environment so that they're able to survive. And there are lots of ways that living things adapt to their environments to help them be able to survive in the area in which they live. So in this next section, we're going to work together in some peer groups to generate some questions. We said early on when we were looking at our learning topics that we were going to generate questions. To generate questions means to think up some questions, to come up with some questions that will guide your research about animal adaptations. Be sure that your questions are strong questions that are going to cause others to think deeply. So your questions should be open-ended. We shouldn't be able to answer your question with just a yes or a no or any single word answer. So your questions are going to be about animal adaptations and how do they help animals survive in their environment. So an example of a question might be this: what are the physical traits that increase animals' chances of survival? So physical characteristics that increase an animal's chances of survival. What are some of those physical characteristics? So that's just one example of a question you might ask. But before we begin our discussion, let's talk about our rules for conversations. So you need to remember, number one, to take turns. Number two, listen actively and respectfully. So when it's your partner's turn, you are listening, you're nodding your head, your eyes are on your partner, and you are actively listening. Build on each other's ideas. So when your partner makes a point, you can take their point and talk about that a little more, add a little bit to it, or talk about another situation, something else that you've thought of that relates to your partner's idea. And number four, ask clarifying questions as needed. So in order to better understand what your partner is saying, ask him or her some questions. So I want you to work with someone in the room there with you and ask some questions. Come up with some questions that will guide your research about animal adaptations. And as you're coming up with those questions, I want you to write them down because we're going to be using those in just a moment. So pause the video, you and your partner come up with some questions about animal adaptations. Okay, welcome back. So I hope that you and your partner, whoever you're working with, came up with some ideas that will help guide your research about animal adaptations. And I told you that we were going to use those questions. So now we're going to share some questions and ideas that were generated and capture those on a chart. So I'd ask you to write your questions down. I'm going to show you an example of what a chart might look like, and I want you to create a chart of your own, like mine, there at home, and we're going to record your questions and your ideas. And remember, as you're working with someone, to listen to their comments. When you're adding your own comments, use complete sentences. And only speak when your partner, your classmate, or your partner has finished speaking. So to add in some ideas, you might say, my mom said, and I'd like to add, or I agree with my friend, but I also think that. So here's what your chart might look like. So I'd like for you to pause the video and create a chart like this on a piece of paper. At the top, put in one column guiding questions, and then in the second column to the right, initial ideas. So pause for just a moment and create your chart. Excellent. So we're going to record your guiding questions and initial ideas on this chart. So the guiding question that I came up with to begin with is, what are the physical traits that increase animals' chances of survival? Put this question on your chart. So let's think about what are some of the physical traits that increase animals' chances of survival. So talk about that and think about that for just a minute. As I was looking at the images and the text and the images in the video, one thing I thought about was speed. I think speed can increase an animal's chances of survival. I also think that the amount of fur that an animal has can increase its chances of survival. What other ideas do you have? pause the video and list the other guiding questions that you came up with your partner. Put those in your chart and put some of your initial ideas, your answers to some of those questions, and we'll add to that as we continue in the unit. All right, very good. I'd like for you to look back at this corner, the bottom right corner of page 3 in your text for close reading. These are the real world perspectives questions. And you're going to use the knowledge that you build during this unit to address these questions. One, maybe more, maybe all 3 of these questions with your peers. And so as you read and as you think about the essential question, how do living things survive in their environment, keep these questions in mind as well. And we'll refer back to page 3. But our real world perspectives questions are: what is the greatest challenge living things face in your environment? How does your day-to-day life affect animals in your environment? And are people responsible for the survival of all living things? All right, that's the end of mini lesson 1. Thank you.